for me
This
to
meeting
see
is
everybody
being
here.
recorded.
I feel so lucky. So Kate is here. Kate and I have worked together regularly over the years. Just wanted to introduce her before I carry on. So Kate, do you want to introduce yourself and explain why you're here and what you're doing?
I've had the joy of seeing a really great change, really terrible change, and then really amazing change. And that was when I did it with Suzanne. So the book is just such a culmination of who you are when you're at work. And I'm busting. I think I've said busting with pride about 1 million times on LinkedIn. I'm so proud of you. Hi everyone, I'm Kate. I'm an independent organizational development consultant, and I support organizations and individuals to just really be the best that they can be. And that covers change and all the other bits of organizational development in between. So absolutely thrilled to be here with Rebecca and Suzanne introducing this book to you today.
Thanks, Kate. And actually, Rebecca and Kate have been two of my greatest cheerleaders, I would say, throughout this process. I always say with Rebecca that I'm not entirely sure I would have finished my PhD without her coaching me. So huge amount of thanks. And Kate, I think, was probably one of the first people to say to me, you should really write a book, and has then encouraged me through the process. So I'm so grateful to both of them being here. So I talked about yesterday, so that the aim of yesterday was about getting the ebook out there, and really to try and get it up the bestseller chart. So by the end of the day yesterday, I was really thrilled that it was #1 on 4 different charts in Amazon. So really delighted about that. So it was in HR and personnel management, business and management and leadership. Alison, you might need to remind me. It's business and investing. And then what was the other one? I can't remember.
Was it organizational
psychology?
Psychology, yes.
Yeah.
The business management leadership was the absolute, that's a big one. That was fantastic.
So yeah, it was very exciting. So my fears about no one buying the book were unfounded. So that was very thrilling. So today the paperback came out, so that's why we decided to do the launch today. There's a few of the team from Practical Inspiration Publishing here. One is Alison. I know Nim, the marketing manager, is going to join us later. Their support has just been incredible throughout the process. And I'm also really thrilled that Sam Warburton is here, who did all the wonderful illustrations for the book. So a bit later, Sam is going to say a few words about her process, probably how nightmarish it was to work with me with my vague ideas about what I wanted, and then she turned it into something beautiful. But we'll come to Sam later. But Alison, I don't know whether there's any news. Is there any breaking news about the book? What's happened since I saw you last?
Oh, I mean, you're still #1 with the little orange flag and everything, which is terrific. So yeah, that'll last. You did so well yesterday. It's absolutely brilliant. It's much harder for us. So we get sort of like, we can see what's happening with Kindle sales immediately. Book sales, like print book sales, are much more difficult because they go out from the warehouse, they go on consignment out to the wholesalers, out to Amazon. And we don't know, honestly, for months, whether they've actually sold through to retailers and end consumers, or whether they're all going to come back as returns. I'm pretty sure they won't. But yeah, it's a much more opaque picture with the print book, but we know it's gone out well, so we're really pleased about that. And if you have a good bookshop near you and you want a print book, do consider going in there and buying your book there, or asking them to stock it, because Amazon isn't everything. Having said that, please leave a review on Amazon, because Amazon reviews kind of are everything.
Thank you, Alison. Yeah, I would echo that. If you've got a copy of the book or you've read it, please do leave a review. It makes a massive difference. Thank you. Right, Rebecca, I'm going to hand over to you because you're going to quiz me all about the book.
I am. I'm very excited about that. So thank you so much, Alison. Lovely to meet you and hear about everything that you've achieved with Suzanne. So over to you, Suzanne. You have been an organisational change consultant for, about 27 years. So what made you decide to write a book now, and why now?
So I think I'll go back a couple of steps. So when I finished my PhD, a lot of people said to me at that point, oh, you should write a book using the PhD. And I knew at that point, so this was 2020, I knew I didn't want to, because one, I knew it wouldn't make a very good book to read, because academic writing is very different to the type of writing that you would do to sell to normal people. So I knew I wanted to do something different. I wanted to get out there and try stuff out a bit. So I kind of went out there and started doing work with lots of different clients about storytelling, particularly with leaders. And what I discovered doing that process is people were actually quite frightened of storytelling. So they had a view of themselves as a person, as a leader, that they weren't very good at storytelling. I used to hear all the time that they didn't think they were funny enough, entertaining enough, etc., to actually use stories in their practice. And I'd seen the power of storytelling through my own research, but also through my work. And I just wanted to give people the tools to make it easier, and to kind of get over this barrier of using stories, because it can make such a massive difference to how you communicate, and not just change, but actually any form of communication in an organization. So when I first got into understanding storytelling, I worked with a gentleman called John Harding, who I think might be here, but maybe he hasn't signed in yet. But I was working on a project with him, and he introduced me to an article by Robert McKee, who's kind of one of the founders of business storytelling. And it's called Storytelling That Moves People. And it's just the most brilliant article, gives you the reasons why stories are that much more persuasive than simply trying to persuade people through facts. So that was back in 2008. And the whole of the period between now and then has really been me trying to understand why that's the case. And so I had so much material and so much information, not just from research, but also from practical stuff I'd been doing, that I just wanted to be able to share it with people in a way that was easily accessible. That the vision in my mind was someone on a journey, or on a plane, or a long car journey, or a long train journey, and they had the book and they could read it in that amount of time, and it would give them information that they needed to be able to do things differently. So that was what I was doing. So the why now question, well, the joke answer is probably that enough time had passed since I wrote my thesis that I felt able to write again. But actually, I mean, there's an element of truth in that, to be honest. That anyone who's done any form of that writing will know it scars you. And I didn't really feel ready to do any more writing for a while. But truthfully, the real answer is that I just built up enough of information of my own case studies and stories that I felt able to share. What was interesting is people originally said, oh, just turn your thesis into a book. Well, the thesis was 80,000 words. The book is 40 odd thousand, and there's no crossover between the two. It's 40,000 new words that I've written, rather than taking some out of the thesis. So I feel quite glad that I waited.
Yeah, it's probably more sellable on Amazon as well than the thesis.
I mean, yeah, I'm not sure anyone would. I mean, Scott read the thing. He may think that it would not sell many copies on Amazon. It certainly was a weighty tome.
The booksellers are available, as Alison said. We won't keep referring to them. But how did you must have had so much information, like, as you say, from your experience, from your research, from your years in organizational change. How did you decide what to put into the book?
It's really difficult, because it grew. It kept growing and growing. I think Alison will know that I had difficulties starting with the writing process. The tyranny of the blank page, as Alison calls it, was a real issue for me. She gave me the excellent advice of just gathering everything together that I'd ever written about change and storytelling, and copying and pasting it into a Word document. And I went through all the courses I'd run, all the presentations I'd given, all the blogs I'd written, copied and pasted it, and I had 20,000 words. So that was before I'd even started filleting stuff out. There was a lot of repetition. But I pretty much did what I did with my thesis, is just try and identify themes. So all the information I had, big piles of stuff. My office was a mess, piles of papers everywhere. I'm quite old fashioned. I work still in documents and papers rather than electronic stuff, bits everywhere, and just started trying to chunk it into information. Alison we had a really good working session together when I was really struggling, and we just sat there in a cafe somewhere together. It was just after lockdown, and she turned up with a roll of wallpaper and just spread it on the table, and we just sat there writing and making notes and chunking information together. So that was really helpful in that it just helped me organize my thoughts. And from that, I was able to come up with a chapter structure. And then it was like, okay, then I can start putting information in. But that process of kind of drawing it out of my head and onto the page was really helped with that big planning session. I think that was the key.
Yeah, absolutely. So the tyranny of the blank page and putting that, or it almost like going into a sieve, and the certain amounts of the nuggets, the diamonds, all the best bits come out into the book, and that definitely shows in the book. What other challenges did you have writing the book?
Well, I found writing really difficult. I always think I like writing until I actually have to do some writing, and then I find I don't like it as much as I thought I do. I think I've mentioned already, I really struggled with the idea of having to start writing again after the PhD. And so I had to take a break for a while because I just wasn't ready. That the idea of having to get, start, I found quite difficult. So Alison's advice was really helpful. Midway through the process, I really started to struggle with perimenopause. And I'm sure the ladies on the call of a certain age will recognise some of these symptoms. So terrible brain fog, really struggled to organise my thoughts. I think the worst part of it actually was just enormous elements of self-doubt, which I was really questioning everything I was doing, which made it very difficult actually to write anything because my brain was telling me that it was all rubbish, and that was quite challenging. But I got help, and the joys of HRT, and that sort of cleared the symptoms. And after that, I was able to carry on, and Alison and the team were so supportive when I did actually have to delay publication by about 6 months because of it, because I just wasn't able to do it. But once I got started, it was like a tap, and a tap that I couldn't turn off. It was all just like coming out. And I took myself off for a few weekends away, and that I was able to blitz through a bit of the content. But I think whilst I was doing all of this, of course, like most writers, I was also working. And so there'd be times when I was really busy with work and I could write more or less. I don't think there's many people who have the luxury of only writing. Most of us have to juggle it with other things. So it was challenging. But once I got going and once I was into the rhythm of it, I actually really enjoyed the process. And sometimes it really was amazing how it just poured out of me, almost like I couldn't believe how quickly it was written once I got started.
It had obviously all been storing up there all that time.
I think
it was there. It was just the fog needed to clear, that bloody fog. I know I know from personal experience how horrible that is.
It's very annoying.
It's very annoying, absolutely. So you put all this effort in, and you've worked so hard through these challenges. Hasn't been easy. Sounds like you've had an amazing team of people there supporting you, which is just wonderful. And I know you're getting a lot of encouragement from having so many people on the call today here, all supporting you. Who is the book for? So all this effort, who did you do it for?
Well, I started off thinking it would be for change people, so people who actually have change in their job title, and probably leaders and managers in organisations who are having to deal with change. And then actually, as I went through the writing process, I realised actually it's probably for everybody who's having to deal with change, because there's something in it for everyone. Everyone in every organisation is having to deal with different levels of change of all sorts, big or small, or is having to communicate with different people. And so I actually think now most people could probably get something from it, even if they're not working in the field of change. There is some information in there about how to present in a way that is engaging and meaningful, how to write a presentation or a document that uses the principles of storytelling to be engaging. So there really is a little bit of something in there for everyone. I think it's aimed mostly at change people and change leaders, but I think there's a lot there for most people. And as I say, when I was writing, I sort of imagined a time poor person that's just looking for some hints and tips and practical advice for how to make a difference in their practice and in their work. So throughout, I've tried to make the book very practical. It's written in an accessible style, I hope, and that there's lots of questions for people to engage with it and work through it and sort of use it as a tool for their development.
Yeah, because there's loads of daily practice suggestions so that you can build your own practice for the lay person, really, as well as change consultants and change specialists?
Well, yeah, because I think the idea that only people who have change in their job title do change, I think is changing. But you know, it used to be that you had special change teams in organisations, and they did the change, and everyone else experienced the change. Actually, what's happening, and I think it's a really good development, is now everyone can be a change maker, and everyone should be a change maker. Shouldn't be in organisations where the only people who can have ideas for doing things differently are those at the top. It needs to be coming from everybody. So the environment in which change is happening is becoming different because more people are doing it. But also, and it's been said for years, you know, the pace of change is increasing and there's more change and blah blah blah. But actually that is true that now it's almost a constant that there is constantly something changing in every organization, and people need to be able to deal with it. And that's what the book is about, giving people the tools to be able to cope with it better.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you do give people the tools. There's lots of tools in there, lots of techniques. I actually haven't seen a book that covers a methodology in such a generous way before. It quite incredible. Can you tell us a little bit about its unique structure?
So it's in 3 different sections, the book, and I did it that way because that's often how when I go out to talk to leaders and change teams about storytelling and change, that's often the way I approach it. So the first section is really about busting some of those change myths we all carry around in our heads, which I think are really, really unhelpful. And I was influenced a lot by Mark Hughes's work here, so I'm thrilled that he's on the call today. Come out of retirement to come and join us. I'm really thrilled you're here, Mark. But there's a stat that everyone seems to be able to talk about in terms of change management, which is that 70% of change fails. And it's nonsense. It came from an article. Mark's done some brilliant work, sort of looking at that in detail. So I definitely encourage you to look his articles up. But it was misquoted from an original article, but it's sort of become this thing that everyone talks about in terms of change management. And for me, it's very negative because it means people are coming into change thinking their change is going to fail, but also that it's going to be really difficult. And we need to start reducing that myth. We need to bust it and make people realise that it's just not true. So for me, there's that we need to look at. The other change myth, which I really don't like, is the change curve, which if Susie Palmer-True is on the call, she'll back me up on that one. It's something that's being appropriated by change people, but it was never meant to be used for change. So if anyone knows it, it was developed by Kubler-Ross as a way to talk about grief. And it offers a sort of a curve of emotions that people might experience when they go through change. I think there's a whole load of problems with that as something to talk about during change. One is it puts the thought in people's minds that change is like a process of grief, which it's not, and it's already very negative. It also puts the thought in people's heads that people move through this process in a smooth way, and that if you're feeling this one day, you'll feel the same the next day. And you get people out of that pit of despair in the middle of the curve, and then they'll be fine. Well, my own research showed that that's not the case. People flip-flop between feeling different things about change depending on what day it is and how they're feeling and what's been going on in their life. So the first part of the book is very much around going through that and figuring out why they are not true and why we need to stop using them to talk about change. But then to talk about, well, why does change feel difficult? And the reason for that is, for me, it's people focus too much on the process. So everyone gets all very excited about a change project and a project plan and making sure everyone goes through the plan. Or if it's a technology project, they get all excited about the technology and introducing that, but they forget about the people and the fact that people are different and individual, and everyone deals with change differently. So I talk a lot about why that's the case and how storytelling can help with that, in that it enables you both to understand how people are feeling about what's going on, but then also to create a story about the change that's engaging and compelling and helps people understand what's in it for them. So that's part 1. Part 2 of the book is my framework, which is called the ARIAs framework. I will talk about that in a bit more detail a bit later, because I'm going to give everyone a chance to have a play with it. So I will talk about that a bit later. And then the final part of the book, section 3, is about helping people be the best storyteller that they can be. So you've gone through the whole process of making a story. There's a story making template in there, which I share, which gives people the structure. We'll talk about that a bit later as well. But also there's lots of ideas around visual storytelling. So if you use PowerPoint, how to make PowerPoint more engaging. I really love the work of Gar Reynolds on this in his book Presentation Zen, which is just brilliant. And I talk a bit about, it's a sort of a necessary evil sometimes using PowerPoint, but there's ways that we can all use it better. So there's some on that. There's a bit in there about kind of, I call it story performing. I don't know whether that's, sometimes people get upset by that because the idea of having to perform, but for me it's just about feeling confident in your ability to deliver a story. Often stories will be verbal, so someone will be standing up on a stage presenting and sharing their story. So there's lots of hints and tips in there about feeling more confident and building your performing skills. But as you said, Rebecca, throughout there's lots of questions and things to consider and templates to fill in and all sorts. So you can work your way through it and do lots of practice as you go along.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the stories within stories. So within the Change Stories, there's like stories of your swimming analogy, and the Christmas tree, and the snake under the rug. There's so many stories. I love all of those that bring, the metaphors that bring change to life. Was that deliberate, or is that just the way you are?
I think a bit of both, but I think you can't write a book about stories without having stories in it. In fact, I think when I wrote the first draft of it, when it went to the development editor, so one of Alison's colleagues, I think her first comment was, "It needs more stories, Suzanne, put more in." So I did put a lot more in, but I think I've always used stories a lot in the way that I talk and the way that I work with my clients. For me, it's just a way to illustrate a point, and but they're memorable. They stick in our heads. The stories are really sticky. So it's, if you want to try and get people to remember what you're talking about, then a story is the way to do it. There was research done at Harvard which showed that it's 7 times more memorable. So the same presentation with the same information was given to a load of students, and one of it was just facts based and one of it was story based, and they remembered 7 times more stuff. So it's really powerful because our brains are made for stories. They're built for narrative and built for stories. So if you're not telling a story about the change in the organization, then someone else might be telling a story. So let's make sure you're telling the story that you really want to be told,
that you want to have in people's brains. That was when I read it, that was such a, we were talking about it with Kate, such an important takeaway for me was that, if you don't tell a story at the water cooler, there will be people telling the stories. And the Christmas tree is a great example of that example. What other key takeaways would you say there are from the book that you'd like, or that you've heard people say, "Oh, I love that bit about," what are the highlights? If you're doing a show reel of your book, what do you think might be in there?
So I think what I really want people to take away from it is that everyone is a storyteller. So in our private lives, most of us tell stories all the time, but somehow when we get into work, we stop doing it. And I think part of that is education, that we're taught in school to converse and to share information in a certain way. I think when we go into business, as many of us here are, you are shown the way to lead and you're shown the way to communicate. And let's face it, in a lot of organizations, leadership communication is like a town hall meeting where some guy stands up with a load of PowerPoint slides and talks through them for half an hour, and then everyone goes away none the wiser. And that becomes the kind of default way of communicating. So what I want people to be able to take away is that everyone can tell stories. We are all innately good at it. It's in our brains. We're able to do it. It's just about reconnecting with that. Thanks, Alison. I know you've got to go.
Thank you, Alison.
So it's about reconnecting with it and not being afraid. And I think, as I said at the beginning, I hear all the time from leaders, "Oh, I just don't think I'm funny enough. I'm not good enough." It's about being you, and you don't have to be a stand-up comedian. You don't need to be the most entertaining person on the planet. It's just about being you and showing up and being authentic and telling stories in a way that feels meaningful to you. So I think I'd want people to take that away and to feel just more confident at giving it a go. because actually really small changes in practice can have a massive impact. So if the next time you had to deliver a presentation to somebody, if you made a slight change to the way that you did it, so instead of, one of the suggestions I do in the book is, instead of thinking about what you want to tell people, come out at it from the other side and think about, well, what do people need to know? And how do you want them to transform as a result of listening to you talking? And then come at it from that perspective, rather than, I want to tell them all this stuff because I think it's really important. And then when you're putting together that PowerPoint, do some thinking about the story that you want to tell. So follow the story arc or follow the structure of a story. Think about what you want to say in that story structure, and then write your presentation, rather than the other way around, where, you know, we all do it. We sit down and we start writing the presentation before we've really thought through what we want to do. So I think that really small change in practice can have a really massive impact. And I think the other thing for me is about paying attention to what's going on in your organization. So you've made reference to the Christmas tree story, and that was the story that I heard in a client that I work with. So in this particular client, they were closing an office, and it was a big change for them, that they hadn't really done much of that sort of thing before. I don't think they'd ever made anyone redundant, so it was a really huge change. And they did it in a really people-centered way. So they gave people 12 months notice that the office was going to be closed. The leadership team all went to meet with people and told them what was going to happen. They said, in 12 months' time, this office will close. We'll support you. We'll give you outplacement. You know, all of the really good stuff that you'd want to do. And then they went away, and business kind of carried on as usual. And in that time, it was Christmas. And so they decorated the office, put up all the Christmas decorations. It was all lovely, just very normal. And then after Christmas, they put all the Christmas decorations away in boxes and put them under the stairs in the office. And what was going to happen is someone was going to donate them to a local charity or a hospice or a hospital, and they were going to go there. But that person didn't do it because they left. So they moved on and got another job. And the Christmas tree decorations stayed under the stairs. And the story started to circulate that the office wasn't going to close because the Christmas decorations were still under the stairs. And why would they still be there if the office wasn't going to shut? And this story went on and on and on and on. Nobody heard it. There was nobody from the project team there. There was nobody from the leadership team. Nobody heard the story. It was one of those classic water coolers. So when the change team and the leadership team turned up about 9 months later to do the final redundancies, first of all, everyone was still there because they hadn't got new jobs. And secondly, all hell broke loose because everyone thought that it was going to stay the same. And because the force in that organisation was inertia, not changing, because nothing had changed, that's where people went back to. So those sorts of stories that you might think, oh, that's a bit silly, why would people think that? But if you hear it and you experience it, then you can do something about it. And in that organisation, nobody did. And it made the change a lot harder. So one of the things I like to talk about is paying attention and just listening to what you hear, because that will give you guidance on what you need to do next.
Yes, because it's not just about the Christmas tree, is it? People will be saying, oh, yes, and I heard so-and-so say blah, blah, blah. So it adds credence to the Christmas tree. It's not just about the Christmas tree decoration.
It isn't. The Christmas tree was like a sort of a symbol, I suppose, of it. But I think in that organisation, because change didn't happen very often, people's natural way of being was that things were going to stay the same. So in the absence of other information, people go back to what they think is the dominant force in that organisation. And there it was inertia. It was not change rather than change.
Yeah, absolutely. As Mark says, a rumour can get around the world before the truth has its boots on. That's so true, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, great. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Susanne, for sharing all of that with us. We just want to have a play. We want to have a go. Can we have a play?
Let's have a play. So I've got a few. Oh, you're going to have to let me share, Kate, because you're the host now. Good, thank you.
So yeah, we're going to look at the ARIA's framework, aren't we, in the story template?
Yes.
Share that with us. Tell us.
So first of all, I've got a little bit of a quiz for you. So based on what you know about stories, I want you to tell me whether you think this is a story or not. Have a quick read through and then tell me what you think, yes or no. Do it in the chat, and then then perhaps Rebecca or Kate can tell me what the consensus is.
Suzanne,
Yes,
we had one slide and then a second slide. Which slide should we be?
it's the one that's now on the screen. I've gone
Right,
I've gone
okay.
too far. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. Are we getting any answers, Rebecca and Kate? There's a lot to read.
Sorry, yes. Yeah, everyone's a lot of yeses. We've got a lot of yeses. Rhiannon saying no, some no's. Pete says yes. Sharon says yes. Donna, yes. Ian, no. But everyone's
Yes,
putting a
but not
question mark next to it.
engaging. Yeah,
Huh?
not engaging. It's not an
Question mark
engaging.
everything,
Yes, but
yeah.
not engaging.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
good point.
Jane says, I think it's a description, not a story. Scott says, is it okay to say yes, but not a very good one?
Yes, that's fine.
And yeah. Oh, now we've got some no's coming in.
Okay.
And Karen says, not very memorable.
It
So,
is not. No,
yeah,
I
that's
will
good.
I'll put you out of your misery. So this is from a website called thestorytest.com, which is created by Anecdote, who are an amazing Australian company that do amazing work in storytelling. I would highly recommend you have a look. If you want to test whether a story is a story, it just helps you start to recognize them. Then go to their website and there's all these things to test. So they think this is a story. I think it's kind of a yes, maybe a story, but it contains some of the elements of a story. So it's not a very good one, but it has, it's fixed in a time. So there's a time marker at the beginning. Remember when we flooded the basement? So that story always has a time marker in it. The classic one, obviously, is Once Upon a Time. You might not want to use that in a business context, by the way. Doesn't always go down very well, but there's usually something at the beginning that sets something in a time. There's also a place marker, so a story always has a place in it. So here you've got the basement, you've got the office, so we know where this is. There's characters in it, so we know that there's Smithy, there's someone else in it who's narrating, so that's another element of a story. And then the final element is that there's stuff that happens, so events is what it's called in kind of the storytelling literature. But there's an event that happens. So in order for a story to be a story, it has to have all of those things in. I would agree with what people have said, that it's not a particularly engaging one. I wonder if it would be better if it was told verbally rather than written down. That was my thought. So that one is a story, but perhaps not a great one. Let's try this one.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a different one.
Different one.
Yeah,
Different
pop that in the
story.
chat.
Let us know what you think.
Let's see what we get this time. Emma's here. Hi, Emma. Emma O'Brien. Okay. Now I've got to know where the where the no is the definite no. Here we're getting lots of no's.
Yeah, this one feels a little bit more certain.
Yeah.
Lots of no's.
It is a no. Yes, it is a no, this one. Interestingly, if you look at the source of this, sorry, my computer keeps flipping around, you'll see it comes from a collection called Stories Have the Power to Surprise, which were gathered together by people saying these are stories. I put this one in because it's a classic example of when, especially communications people, say that something's a story when it isn't a story. So there's nothing in here that ticks the boxes around a place or a time or a series of events. It's almost like a shopping list about what a great guy Peter Lowry is, rather than a story as such. So I put this in as an illustration, really, of how sometimes we think there's a story, but it isn't. And this comes from a compilation of things called stories, so it just shows that it's easy to get it wrong sometimes.
Yeah. So this person, the coach, I think it is trying to do like a case study, but they're doing it not in a story way, as you're going to share with us later.
Exactly. There's to be a story, it has to have these elements in. So there has to be a time and a place, there has to be people, there has to be events, but most importantly, there has to be emotion. So the story has to both generate emotion, but it also has to have emotion in it, because otherwise we don't care about it. So if it's just a list of stuff like this, it's boring. It's like reading someone's diary, you know, that you know, at 10:30 I've got this meeting. It's tedious. So there has to be, we need to write something that creates emotion. So that's what makes a story different. There's no prizes for that, by the way, just a bit of fun.
Let's get excited.
Sorry, guys. But go to storytest.com if you want to do more. It's brilliant. It's a lot of fun. I quite regularly get it wrong on there, so it's good fun to have a look at.
Brilliant.
All right. So this is the ARIAS models. We mentioned this earlier. The reason that I created this was to give people help with thinking about what are the things that we need to think about if we're trying to build more stories into our practice during change. So this is the wonderful illustration that Sam did for me. So beautiful. The choice of the orchestra is deliberate. So you've got the change person at the front who's conducting things, but actually everyone needs to work together to create the change. So it's collaborative. So that's why we did it like that. And we've got the lovely icons for each of the areas of the model, and they're repeated throughout the book, but also on the merch. So when Guy did the lovely trolley tokens for me, each of them has one of these little icons on at the bottom. So it's repeated in a way to make it memorable, hopefully. So I talked a little bit about attention earlier. It's about taking notice of what goes on around you, and the Christmas tree story is a really good example of that. But it's also paying attention to your impact as a leader, as a change practitioner. There's lots of questions in the book about reflection and how to think more about your impact so that you can actually notice what's going on around you. I think organizations are very noisy places. Typically there's lots of talk going on, but often not very much conversation and dialogue. So the purpose of the attention is really to make sure that we are really noticing what's going on around us so that we can understand how people are feeling about what's going on. So that's the attention side. Reflection is the next one, and this is something that I think is missing in most change programs. In fact, most projects, full stop, in organizations, is the opportunity to reflect and take some time out, think about what's happening, and then recalibrate. And I think we just keep going and going and going. And I talked about the project plan earlier, the focus on process. We just get addicted to the project plan and think that we have to just keep going, even though we might realize that the project isn't going in the direction that we want it to. So it's really important to take time to reflect on that big picture, but also small picture. So every day, carve out some time to reflect on how the day's gone, what you could have done differently, what could have gone better. You know, some days we just leap from one Zoom call to one Zoom call, right? And there's no time to really think about what's happened. So I think that's really important to build in. And there's a great article, which I often refer to here, which was in the MIT Sloan Management Review. And it was a study of firefighters in the US. And they coined a term which I love, which is called dysfunctional momentum. And it's where the project just keeps going and going and going because nobody's actually said, whoa there, let's stop, this isn't doing what we're doing, this isn't doing what we need it to do. So I think that building in that reflection is really important. Inquiry is the third stage in the model. I think a lot of communications around change is advocacy for the change, trying to persuade people why the change is a good idea, rather than asking people questions about what they actually need and how the change responds to that, how it's going to give them what they need. And Alan Arnett was going to be on the call today, but unfortunately he's been called away urgently. But he told me a story about the shiny pen, and that so much of change communications is about trying to sell people a shiny pen. You know, look at my shiny pen. Do you want this shiny pen? Without understanding whether they actually need a shiny pen.
I love that story.
It's a brilliant story. It's a shame he can't be here because he tells it a lot better than me. But we need to be asking questions. And as leaders of change, as change practitioners, we need to be getting out there and talking to people and inviting their input. And this can sometimes feel quite scary. People talk a lot about change resistance. I think for me, my view of change resistance has really changed over the years. I used to see it as a bit of an annoyance, the actions of people who were just deliberately thwarting what I was trying to do. I actually see it now as super engagement. So if someone is engaged enough in what I'm doing to question me, to push back, I see that as something to be celebrated rather than dismissed. We need to be getting out there and listening to these people. You know, often it's simply because someone wants more information because you haven't given them enough. They don't understand what it means for them. So we need to be getting out there and talking more. So inquiry is really important.
Free
Appreciation.
consultancy.
Sorry?
Free consultancy.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. You need to listen to all this stuff. Appreciation is massively important. So a lot of my work is based in appreciative inquiry, which is this idea that you take the best of what is and then take that forward. And I think a lot of change programs, they just throw everything away that's been done before and then do something new, and they expect people to get behind it. Whereas there's lots of research that shows if you're able to show how something is linked to things that people value from the past, they're more likely to engage with it. So in order to appreciate something, you need to understand it. So all these other things come into play, but we need to be able to be appreciating the good things in organizations and not trying to change everything. It's really powerful sometimes to explain why some things are staying the same because they're working really well. So appreciation is massively important. And then storytelling. So you use all of these things to create your story that you want to tell about change. Using the principles of storytelling. So we've already talked about the idea that you have that kind of structure, the different elements, that creation of emotion. And I'll go on in a minute to talk about the template that you can use to do that. But those are the kind of the elements of the model. And if you do a little bit of all of those, it will make a massive difference to your practice. So that's the model.
Love that. Brilliant.
So something for you to have a little go at. So one of the tools that I share in the book is a SWOT analysis. So this is an appreciative version of a SWOT. So I don't really like using SWOT. I think a lot of people here will have used it. I tend to find people get a bit hung up on the weaknesses and the threats and find it difficult to do the strengths and the opportunities. So this is an appreciative version of focusing on strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. So what am I good at? What can I do better? What do I care deeply about? And how will I know I am succeeding? And you can change that to a team or an organization. So this is a really great way, I think, of getting some conversations started about change in an organization. So you could change the I to the we, or to the team or whatever. But it's just a fantastic way to get conversations going about change. So I would like to invite you to think back to what I've just been talking about storytelling, about arias, about the different elements of stories, and see if you can come up with some elements of the SAW analysis for yourself. So things that you already know you're really good at around storytelling, things that you might want to try and do better, what and how do you know you're succeeding, and why do you care about storytelling? So very welcome for people to shout out, but also very happy for people to put it in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing so that I can see you all.
Okay, so is everyone going to have a couple of minutes to do this, are they?
Yeah, I'll let you. You don't have to do it in the moment unless someone's already done it.
Oh, I see. Okay, so we're not doing it right now. No,
No,
sorry.
I'm happy for people to offer some suggestions
Yeah.
if looking at it they've got anything, or they can take it away and do it. It depends on what they feel like doing. I'm not going to force people to do anything or to share if they don't want to.
So SAW stands for
strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results.
Okay, opportunities.
So strengths would be what are you good at in terms of storytelling.
Yeah.
Opportunities would be what could you do better.
Yeah.
Aspirations would be what do I care deeply about? So why do you care about storytelling? And results would be how will I know I am succeeding?
Fantastic. Okay.
Anyone had any thoughts?
Any thoughts? So if I mean, maybe Kate's got a thought. Kate, have you done this?
Well, I think the how do I know I'm succeeding is really an interesting one, because we often think about like a thing that we want to happen in change. Like I want that thing to, I want this system to be implemented, or this process is going to be different. But actually, when you start thinking about how will I know I'm succeeding, you start thinking about the impact that you're going after. The what do you want people to be doing? What do you want them to be feeling? What do you want them to be saying? Which is a really different way to D-Day, when we implement this system and we turn it on and it's going to be marvelous. So I think it's a really useful way of structuring that you know, end game? What does that look like?
Yeah, and it's a really good way of taking something that is as change can be quite negative and turning it into something quite much more positive and hopeful, which is the SOAR analysis. Emma says, love how this is so relevant and useful for individual as well as team or organizational change, especially like the addition of the aspirations. Absolutely.
I would say if you're working on in a project or in an organization and it's hard to get people to contribute or to you want to invite discussion and contribution, then this is probably one of the best ways of doing it. It feels unthreatening, and it just gets people talking. And I think it's I've used it loads in Teams.
Brilliant, fantastic. So are you sharing the story making template with us, Susanne?
I am going to do that now.
Which is very exciting. We've got some lovely comments while you do that from Bill and June, Rhiannon. I'm sure Kate's collating those for us.
Right, so here's the template. This is what I've developed. Again, it was a sort of a response to some of the work I was doing with leaders who were saying, yeah, this is all very interesting, Susanne, and I get why storytelling is important, and you know, I understand intellectually why I should be doing it, but I don't really know where to start. So this was the purpose of this. And it's a template that you can use to write a story. And when I tested it, and I know there's some lovely people here from ASDA who very kindly let me come along to one of their team meetings, and they were my guinea pigs and let me test it on them. They were able to come up with questions quite quickly, you know, 10-15 minutes, you can come up with a story. So so it really works. You can do the bare bones of it with that. So it's a bit of if you think about the way that a story of change would normally be told, the focus is quite different, but that's deliberate. And for those of you who are paying attention at the beginning, when Rebecca did her introduction, you may have noticed that she used this to structure her introduction. And I quite often use this as a way to structure an introduction for myself if I am going to a networking meeting or something like that. So you can use it for all sorts of things. So the first stage is about what we've discovered. So this is the beginning point of the story where you're setting the scene. So I said already, a story has to have a time and a place marker, and this is this here. You're setting the scene for what's happened, and you can share here what you've found out already. So this could be through using arias, it could be through having conversations, it's where you've been looking for stories. You share all of that here to answer some questions about who we are as an organisation, who we are as a team, what makes us different, what do we value, how are we going to take this forward into the future. So it's that real scene setting so that people feel very comfortable about where they're at and where this story is coming from. And then once you've set the context, you can then clearly state the issue that's got to be identified and how it's why it needs to be resolved. So this is this because of this, with a little trapdoor. Another amazing illustration from Sam here, by the way. She put all of this together. We often miss this. So going back to the advocacy rather than inquiry, when we're communicating change, we often miss this stage. So we don't say why we're doing it and what this change is there to do. So what's the problem that we need to solve? Not all changes are issues or problems, but most of them have a link back to something that's we need to fix. And then we also need to talk here about why things that we used to do are no longer working. So we can really explain what's happening. I liken this to in Tesco's, where they have the customer service board and there's the you said we did bit on there. So you said all our trolleys have got wobbly wheels. We replaced all the shopping trolleys. This is where you do this bit in your change story. So you talk about what you found out and what this change is going to do to solve the problems that people have told you about. And if the change you're doing isn't going to solve any problems at all, then you probably need to ask yourself about why you're doing it, because it should be there to solve something. There are some exceptions, so some kinds of regulatory change or something like that, but the bulk of the time you should be doing something because it's going to make work better for people or for the organisation. So the third stage is where we talk about what we're going to do. And this is where you explain really clearly in really simple language what is going to be done to solve this issue or problem. And really keep it simple. I think all of us as consultants and change practitioners have at some point fallen into the trap of using consultancy speak or management speak. We need to avoid that. Project speak, you know, it's so easy to do, particularly when you've been working on a project or a program for a really long time and you know all this stuff, but the people out there in the organization might not. So you need to keep this really simple, no jargon, no long words, no flowery language, really simple crafting of the story to explain what are we going to do, who's helping us with it, and what's already been done. So if you've got consultants coming in to help, this is where you explain who they are. If some work's been going on behind the scenes, because let's face it, often that's the case before you communicate out to everybody, then explain to people what's already been done so that they know what's been done before they know. Really important. I would say this is probably one of the most important parts of the change story, is to write this so it's really easy to understand. Then we have this stage, so that's where we have our little costume change. And this is another stage that's often missed. This is where you talk about why change is needed, why now in particular. And this is not about, so I know some change models talk about creating a burning platform to explain the change. I fundamentally disagree with that, because I don't think we should be going around frightening people of the disastrous consequences if we don't change. But we do need to help people understand why it's happening now, why at this particular moment. So I think it's just about explaining simply why it has to happen and why it has to happen now. Not particularly detailed, it's just a bit of context setting. It's not about being frightening, it's just about explaining why it has to happen. Then we have our crystal ball, which is where we start predicting the future. So this is the absolute most important part of the story. So this is where you explain to people what the future is going to look and feel like once this new world is in place. And at the end of the day, what people are most interested in is what's in it for me. You know, when it comes down to it, as an individual in an organisation, that's what you want to know. So you need to be explaining this to people at this point. So it's not about sharing the project plan. It's not about talking about at a high level, you know, the strategy or the, you know, the money of the organization or the, you know, how great it's going to be for all the shareholders. It's about explaining to employees, what does this mean? So you've got to think about your audience here. What are they going to be most interested in hearing about? What can you explain to them about what it's going to be like? What's it going to look and feel like for them in this new way of working? And an organisation that I've worked with previously did some great work on this, where they were changing their ways of working post-COVID, and they created some cartoons where they explained what this new world was going to look like. So moving from a sort of 9 to 5-day a week in the office culture to something a lot more flexible. And they created cartoons using real people in the organisation to explain what was going on. And it created so much conversation and interest in the change, far more than the dreaded town hall meeting, where everyone goes along and just sits there and sort of consumes the knowledge rather than engaging with it. So this for me is the most important part. We need to focus on that. What's in it for me? What might be difficult? So the classic story arc, if you think about films and books and things, there's always something that goes a bit wrong, and that creates emotion. You know, we're worried about what's going to happen to the protagonist of the story. So there's always emotion in it. We need to create the same in a business context. Again, it's not about scaring people, but it's about being really honest. If there are going to be difficult times ahead, then we need to be honest at this point about what that might be, but then also what we're going to do about it as leaders and change practitioners. So the classic, I bet all of you here have heard it. There'll be a presentation about a change. Someone asks the question, will there be any redundancies? And the person in charge goes, no, 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 because they're trying to be reassuring and nice. And then 6 months down the line, there are redundancies and all trust is lost. So if you think that might be an option because of something that's happening, I think it's really important to be honest here about the fact that that could happen, but you're trying to mitigate it or whatever. So that all goes in there. And then the final stage, again, often not included in change communications, is about where people can go next. So where can they go if they've got questions? Where can they go if they want more information? How could they help? You know, are there opportunities for people to get involved? How can we do that? So it's really important to mark this out so that people understand. Let people know what's going to happen next. When will you communicate with them next? All of those sorts of things, so that you're making it really clear to people what's going to happen and their role in the process. You're trying to reduce any feelings that people might have of uncertainty by giving them some of the answers here. And if you can't give them the answers, then you show them where they can go. So this is where you invite inquiry and contribution. So that's the template. It's in the book. There's also a copy on my website if people want to print a copy off. It's a PDF. The PDF version has got little prompts in it so that you can think about all the things I've talked about. I will send a link out to that as well after today when I email everybody afterwards. But I think it's helpful. I've had lots of feedback that it's helpful. So yeah, the purpose of that really is just to give people a bit of a structure. You can go off piste once you're more comfortable with it, but just if you're starting off in storytelling, this is a good place to start.
Absolutely. And you give us some really great tips on doing that in the chapter story making, as well as you said, the link that people can download the template. And that brings me, that beautiful drawing really brings me to introduce somebody very special to you, as well as Alison, the publisher and founder of Practical Inspiration Publishing, supported you. We've heard from Alison, who sadly had to leave, but also the lovely Sam Warburton. Are you there, Sam? Can you unmute for a minute so we can all meet you? An illustrator on a mission to nurture thoughtful creativity. And you certainly did that. Are you there, Sam?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, fantastic. I can see you. Okay, that's great. Fantastic. So yeah, you certainly completed your mission and made the ARIA's framework sing. I'm very pleased with that pun. I particularly loved the change curve. I thought that was hilarious. What was your creative process for developing the illustrations, Sam?
Yeah, so once I had a really clear idea from Susanne of what she wanted, I just wanted to visualize it in a way that was engaging and fun, but still stay true to Susanne's message in the book. With ARIAs and the template as well, I sort of looked at the overall picture first and what I wanted it to look like as an overall image. And I kind of focused in on the little bits, trying to make it as clever and engaging as I could. So things like appreciation. I thought the throwing of the rose on stage for the orchestra, for that. The instruments, so reflection, I chose a instrument that had a reflective surface on.
Right.
Just little things like that.
Yeah. And the costume change. I love that as well. The idea of going in and putting on a different costume. Yeah.
When I thought of costumes, I kind of think of, I sort of tried to tie it back to the orchestra theme as well. I thought the big dress, lots of layers, that kind of thing.
Fantastic. And what are the challenges, do you think, when you're illustrating for a book as amazing as this?
I think the challenges are, can I do it justice? Because I know such a lot of effort and time goes into writing the book. I really wanted the illustrations to match up to that level of commitment and do their job properly, and kind of aid the words, not just be pretty things in the book. I wanted them to help portray that message.
Yes, and bring the framework alive, which you've done beautifully. Thank you so much, Sam. We really appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it was really important for me to have original artwork in it, because I wanted, I've had a go at playing around on Canva and doing things, but they weren't very good. I really wanted to have some original work in there, and I'd seen Sam's work previously through other work that she'd done with Alison, and I thought that's exactly what I want, that kind of line drawing, very simple, but that actually really brings it to life. And I'm so thrilled with them. I mean, Sam, it's been an absolute joy working with her, and she's been helping me with the pictures for the merch as well. So all of the pictures that Guy has done on the merchandise for me, they are Sam's illustrations as well. So it's been a really collaborative process. And yes, I really added to the book. I wouldn't have wanted to publish a book without them.
No, absolutely, absolutely. It wouldn't be the same without them, would it?
It
And
wouldn't.
I remember you telling me when you were writing the book, of course, it's a amazing illustrator. She's fantastic. So it's lovely that it's really nice to meet you, Sam. Thank you so much. And lots of people on the team. I can see Guy is there. And hi, Guy. Hi, Guy, for doing the amazing work there on the merch. And you've got some endorsers here. It'd be lovely to hear from some endorsers. If you've endorsed the book, just give us a shout. I know, for example, that Kate, you have endorsed the book. What did you most like about ChangeStories for you?
Well, Suzanne sent me the book as a PDF, so it was like read on the computer screen, and within a day, I think I text you and said, "Oh, I've just used British transition model with a client." It was amazing, and it got right to the nub of where we were trying to get to really quickly. So the book is so practical. That's what I loved the most about it. Really, really useful nuggets of tools and techniques to just go and immediately use with teams, with clients, with whatever type of work that you do. So useful. And like I said, well, then it's just been an immediately, it's well thumbed now, Suzanne, because it's because I'm using it all the time. So yeah, very practical and useful.
I'm thrilled. I like the idea of it becoming well thumbed and people writing on it and using it as something very practical. For anyone who isn't familiar with Bridges, I'm not a fan of many change models, but it's one of the ones that I actually do like, where it talks about having beginnings and endings, and then a transition in the middle. And I think often with change we focus too much on the beginnings, so what's going to be different, and we don't focus enough on what's ending. And that Bridges talks about the fact that if you allow people time to focus on what's ending, then they move forward with energy. And I think for me, that's one of the things I love about it as a model. We need to give people time to understand what they're no longer going to be able to do, and almost mourn that loss, and then they can move forward with energy. So yeah, it's I'm a big fan of Bridges, always have been.
Fantastic.
I think I read his book in the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, those are our early teachers, aren't they, Susanne? They
Yeah,
stay
exactly.
the ones that have the last test of time. Thank you, Kate. Before I'm going to come to a few more, I did forget to say at the beginning, I'm going to be sacked, I know, but I did forget to say that we've got a prize giveaway at the end of Guy's incredible merch. So stay tuned, and we'll come on to that in a bit. But what for now, let's go back. It may be Susan Creedon. Are you there, Susan? I know you endorsed a book. It would be lovely to hear from you. Yeah, there you are. Tell me, what was it about the book for you that really sang?
I think it's what Susanna said here about what the key takeaway, that at heart we're all storytellers. And I think Susanne brings that out in a way that you think, yeah, we can all tell stories, and just makes it accessible. And I think that's so important in organizations in particular, and all of what, echoing so much of what Susanne has said here today. But it's so practical, it's easy for people to read and to follow. And I think it would make a great addition to any organization if, when they're, as you said, Susanne, yourself, there's change going on all the time. So it will always help people. And especially, I think, first time managers and leaders who really want to understand that change doesn't have to be scary, but actually it's okay.
Yeah, and actually that does come across in the book, doesn't it, Susanne? Well, it does for me anyway. That it does feel like a guide to that. Sorry, Susanne, you're going to perhaps say something to Susan there.
I was, because Susan's been a huge support to me through the writing process. So Susan's own book was published this May. So she's another practical inspiration publishing author. And because she was a few months ahead of me, I was able to pick her brains almost constantly about how to do things. And Susan's based in Oxford, and we went down and had a jaunt around Blackwell's bookshop together, didn't we? And for me, that was a really motivating moment when we prowled around the shelves in the business section looking for books that were published by people we knew. It was just lovely to think, oh, I might be there at some point. So I'll be coming down again soon, Susan, to see if I can see ChangeStories on the shelf. But she's been so supportive. Yeah, it's nice to have someone who's done it ahead of you.
Next time you could sign your copy that's in Blackwell's. Yes, and they'll put a sticker on it. It's really cool.
I see celebrities doing that all the time, going like in stations and airports and things. I'll have to start doing that. I'll probably get done for shoplifting. That's probably what will happen to me.
They'd be honoured to have you, Susanne. They'd be honoured to have you. You need to get your table out there tomorrow.
Yeah.
And another author is Susie. Is Susie on the call today? And Susie also works in Change. Is she here today, Susie?
Oh, she did say she might struggle to join. She's in a photography shoot today. So
yeah, okay.
She might be in her undies. So
oh gosh, yes, we don't want that. Not for this kind of podcast. This is going to be a podcast as well, isn't it, Susanne? For people who haven't caught it, that's great. So you can tell your friends that they can listen again later. Okay, fantastic. Jocelyn, is Jocelyn here? No, maybe not.
Oh, she was here earlier. I think people have had to.
People have had to go. Yeah, that's no problem. Well, it's lovely. And just a mention for those endorsers. And if you have endorsed a book and want to just say a few words, or if any of you want to say a few words, just pop a note in there for Kate. But it's really lovely that we've got those people endorsing the book. And so
it did mean a lot to me, everyone endorsing it, being early readers. It was, again, it's a point, anyone who's written a book will know, it's the point when you're releasing it to the world is quite scary. And so it was really nice to be able to send it to people and for people to start coming back to me and go, oh, I really liked it. And then it just makes you feel a lot more confident. So thank you. There's a few of you here. And I know other people have had to nip off, but it meant the world. So thank you very much.
It was great. It's great for imposter phenomenon, isn't it? When you're feeling that, to have such a crowd of people cheering you on and saying this is brilliant, it sort of really validates all that hard work, doesn't it?
It's really scary putting it out there. Yeah, because I see Mark says, like sending your child out to school. It is. It's just there's that awful fear of like, oh my goodness, what if this is really terrible and everyone laughs? And it just, it's nice when people start coming back and going, oh no, it's really good.
Yeah. A bit like sending a child into the big wide world. If you've done all you can do, that's all.
Yes.
And clearly your endorsers and people who've read the book already, and the testimony to the amount of people here today is to say that, it's a great book. Just relax and release the child.
Exactly.
Fantastic. So Susanne, what do you want people to think? And what do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do after they've read the book? What's your hope for the book?
So my hope is people, first of all, feel really excited about with the prospect of doing more storytelling. So it's not scary. They feel excited about it. I think I'd like people to feel excited about change too, but that's probably a bit of a big ask because not everyone likes change. But wouldn't that be great? I'm looking at all the change practitioners in the room. Imagine how amazing that would be if everyone was excited about change. It's not going to happen, but it would be nice if people could feel excited at the prospect of trying out using something new. Yeah. I think I would like people to approach their work with that storytelling lens. So that if, as I said at the beginning, if they're having to do some communication or do a presentation or something, if they could stop themselves from leaping into the way that they've always done it and try to do something a bit different, I think that would be amazing. And really small changes can make a massive difference. So you don't have to be suddenly telling stories all the time. It's just about slightly tweaking the way that you do things. And what I'd like people to do is just get out there and try. So it can feel scary the first time you deviate from your normal script of doing things. But I think if you go out there, have a go at using stories, get some feedback from people, and just keep honing your craft. I think it's amazing the impact that it can have on your effectiveness as a leader and as a change practitioner and as an employee. So yeah, that's what I'd like people to do. Just get out there and do it and be excited at the prospect.
Yeah, So yeah, you want people to be excited about change. You say it's not possible, but if anyone in coaching knows that Patrick Lencioni got people excited about conflict in organizations, people are like, why are we not having any conflict? We need to have conflict. And a few years ago, people were like, no, we don't do conflict. So look at, absolutely. And if any book can do it, it's this book, because it is a story. It is exciting to read. So why wouldn't you want to dip into change, put your toe in, and as you say in your swimming analogy, just jump straight in and you'll,
Jump in and have a go.
Have a go. Absolutely. And I guess for those people who really just like, I'm not telling a story, there must be a certain way they can dip the toe in. It's not got to, is there a way that they can start to tell a story, do you think?
I think yes. So I think it's about trying to have a little bank of stories that you can use. So it's really hard sometimes to remember all these stories that you might have heard. So David Lee, who unfortunately I don't think he's been able to join us from the US, but he's a great colleague of mine and Susan's, and he talks about creating a story bank where you start noting down experiences that you've had or stuff that you've observed that you think you could use as stories or analogies or things to illustrate a point you're trying to make. And the way I do it is just a really simple Word document, a table, 2 columns. In the one column, I write the story or the kind of bullet points of the story that I want to try and remember. And then in the other column, I put some keywords so that I can search in it to find the story that's appropriate to the situation. So I might put in coaching or performance management or something, so I can then search for it. And I think if you start to create that and you start spotting stories a bit more, then you'll have the confidence then to use them. So it's not even about sharing personal stories. You don't have to. You can share things that you've observed, stuff that you've read, things you heard on the radio or saw on the television, but just start trying to build some of that in. So rather than just bamboozling people with facts all the time when you're communicating, just add some little story elements around it. Yeah, that's the kind of an easy way to start.
Brilliant. Yes, as Matt says, it's spotting the stories as well as being able to tell them. I love that. Thank you, Matt. Oh no, Mart, sorry, my eyesight, even with glasses, it's not great. Apologies for that. And so what
I've just put a caveat on that though.
Yeah.
So David did tell me a warning story once, which is worth remembering, is to not use stories that are someone else's story without having their permission first. So he told a story about a conference he was at. You probably heard this one too, Susan, where someone was standing up on stage telling a story, saying something had happened to them. And then someone in the audience stood up and went, "That wasn't you, it was me." So, careful with other people's stories.
Oh, how scary, how embarrassing. Well, we're going to go on to questions and answers in a bit. I know Kate's got those ready for us. But before we do, Susanne, what can readers do to spread the word? What can they do? Because we all want to support you, you know that. What can we do?
So thanks, Rhiannon. I can see you're heading off. I just spread the word about storytelling. So if you decide to do something at work and people notice it's different, then tell them what you've done differently. I think if you're working with leaders as a coach or as a trainer, just encourage them to do some of this stuff in their work. Encourage people to buy the book or have a look at the template on the website. It's on Amazon. The ebook's still available. Unfortunately, now $7.99 rather than 99p, but it's still there. The paperback is out today. I've got a nice discount code for you from Practical Inspiration Publishing. If anyone wants it, 30% off. I'll be sharing that at the end. So I think just spread the word. I'm really passionate about storytelling in change, in everything, in every form of work life. I can see the difference it's made in my own life. So yeah, I would really encourage people to have a go and spread the word.
Yeah, absolutely. Susan's got to go, so bye. Thank you. From Susan, and really, that's just amazing. I think you've just answered all my questions beautifully, Susanne. Thank you so much. I hope I've done your book justice. I'm going to hand over now to Kate, who's got some questions.
Yes, and if anyone else has got any questions that is that have been burning while Suzanne's been talking. Drop them in the chat and we'll add them to the list. So let's start with the one that Donna's just put in the chat, actually. How do you know when it's too much? Because actually, Rebecca, the other day when we were with a client, accused me of potentially doing it too much.
I can't
So-
believe that would be true.
Yeah, I went very
Fine.
overboard. So I'm just channeling it. So how do we know when it's too much?
Well, at the end of the day, if you're in business and you're using storytelling to make a business point, it has to make a business point. So you don't want to get too much into the kind of personal anecdote. That just annoys people. So I think the story that you tell has to link to the point that you're trying to make. And stories, they should be quite short. So I think if you're telling a story verbally, a few minutes is probably people's attention span, I would say, before you start to lose people. I think if it's a written story, a page and a half probably of A4 before people start to lose interest. So I think it's about always trying to tie it back to the point that you're trying to make. It can be really useful sometimes to lead into the story so people know what's coming. So for example, if you're in a meeting and you're trying to make a point and you think, oh, I've got a really good story that's going to illustrate that, it's really useful sometimes to go, actually, I've got a story that will help illustrate my point. And it's as deliberate as that, so that people know it's coming. They know what to expect. They're not just sitting there thinking, well, what's Donna up to now? Why is she saying this to me? So I think it's signposting, but keeping it really, really close to the point that you're trying to make. And you don't have to use story for everything. You know, facts and figures, absolutely fine. But think about ways to present them in a really interesting way.
Yeah, I think mine was possibly laziness in that I was just went for a story for everything. Probably should have mixed it up a bit.
It can be too much of a good thing, you know.
Yeah. So Guy has just put one in the chat. If you can see, presumably, unless you're presenting some sort of parable, then authenticity of the story is important and comes through in the telling. So picking up on your point about telling other people's stories.
Definitely, I think there needs to be truth in it. Ideally it'll be something that's happened to you or something that you've observed. Definitely don't tell other people's stories without their permission. And if you do tell other people's stories, I think make it really clear that this didn't happen to you. This was something that you heard or saw, just in case the situation with the man at the conference happens. So yeah, I think it's important to be really honest. And I think the authenticity point is really important. So I probably said it already, but you should do this in a way that feels right for you. So if you don't feel that comfortable with storytelling, then don't go mad straight away and start trying to put a story in for everything. Just put the odd bit in. If you're really comfortable with it, then use this as your way of talking and presenting. So I think it's about being authentic to you. There's 4 truths of the storyteller, I think, is one of the things I talk about in the book, that it has to be truth to you as a storyteller, truth to the audience. There's, that's what's really important.
And we've got one from Bill, which leads into, well, I think probably Bill comes off the authenticity point. So how crucial is language to storytelling and narrative?
It is really important. So I said earlier on about of using simple language. I think that's really key. There's loads of research out there to show that people just don't remember stuff that's too complicated. So, keep it simple. Stupid is the original thing about communications, isn't it? It stands true for storytelling as well. I think you need to be able to tie it into the language of the place where you're working, that environment. So I worked on a project a while ago, and a load of consultants came in and they were effing and jeffing everywhere, and that did not fit with the organisational culture and caused a lot of issues and stress. And I think it's about being appropriate for where you are and choosing your language carefully to get your point across. With a story, I think it's really hard to tell a story off the cuff. So I would always say you have to prepare, and I usually prepare my stories by writing them down first, rather than by telling them verbally, and then you just keep honing and honing them until they get better.
Well, that's a good tip. Yeah, well, we all need to print off numerous copies of the PDF so that we're I will go and do that. So from Zoe, we have, would you build into a story to acknowledge a previous, possibly similar change that did not work or land well?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. 1,000 times yes. I think often on change programs, no lessons are learnt from things that happened before, or if they are gathered anywhere, they're not shared with people for fear of causing an uprising. So I think it's really important to acknowledge, thanks Mark, preach. It's really important to acknowledge where stuff went before. You can then try and start to illustrate how this time's going to be different. And you can do that really easily by taking a different approach to comms as to what you did last time. So immediately, if you haven't used storytelling before, if you start using storytelling this time, it will feel different to people. But it has to be acknowledged, because otherwise it becomes this huge story that's told, and it gets in the way of what you're trying to do. And if you've ever worked on a technology implementation where there was another technology implementation maybe 5 or 10 years before, and maybe that didn't go so well, and you spend so much time trying to get over it won't be like that this time, that yeah, you have to deal with it head on. I call it inoculation. You have to inoculate people so that they get over what went before and realize that this is going to be different.
Yeah, we've all been there with
Oh
the
yeah, there's lots of nods in the room. I can see Mark being like, that's my life, that is.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so we had some questions from people that had to leave. So the first one is Deborah recognized your Christmas decorations story and said, do you have any suggestions of how we can find something similar for our own change challenges? So how do you, when you're looking around for things, how do you find things that support the storytelling?
I think it goes back to paying attention. So it's about really listening to what's going on in the organization and then remembering them. So I remembered that story because it really stuck with me at the time, but also I wrote it down. So I think if you start to hear this stuff and you never hear it in the official channels, this is never, an official communications from the change program, or in a management meeting or anything like that. This is just wandering around the building, hearing things. Then make a note of them in your story log, and then you can start to use them. So I think it's just keeping your ears open to something, but also thinking back to previous experiences. So we've all got experiences of where we've worked with change and it's been good or it's been bad. But yeah, just think back and see if there are the things you can pull out from your previous experience. Thanks, Anish.
Okay, and we had another one from somebody who's had to leave. So Satvia asked, what are your key lessons around resilience?
Well, I mean, I feel slightly nervous having this conversation with the queen of resilience in the room, Rebecca Manda. But I think for me, it's what worked for me with this is gathering people around me who would support me. So when I needed help with the writing, to get people who could help me. So either through giving me tools to help me, like Alison did, or being someone to talk to about what I was finding difficult, like Susan and David. So yeah, I think it's about gathering people around and asking for help. So it would have been very easy for me just to kind of go, well, I can't do this, so I'm not going to do this. But I don't find asking for help particularly easy. I like to be able to manage things on my own. So it was difficult for me, but I had the same situation with my PhD. So where I had to take a leave of absence for a year from that, because the juggle of doing that and working and family was just too much. So I took a leave of absence, but it was really difficult for me to ask for that. And it hurt at the time. It seemed like a failure, but it was the right thing to do. And the PhD was better as a result of it. And I think this book is the same, in that if I'd pushed myself to do it by the original publication date, it would have been rubbish. So yeah, ask for help, get people around you to prop you up. That would be my advice. And also recognize the things that help you become more resilient. So there's stuff in the book about creating a resilience plan for yourself. I think it's about understanding what makes you feel less resilient and what helps you feel more, and then you can go to those things when you need it.
I did nearly get Rebecca and I full on cheerleader pom-poms, because we are like so proud.
You get the pom-poms out if you want.
Everyone would want pom-poms. Just looking at everyone's like, oh, they've all got their pom-poms out.
Maybe that's the next bit of merch, guide. Can you make pom-poms? I don't know.
We could have had a craft session. We could have made them
Yeah.
with a piece of card and some wool.
Could you make some pom-poms, Guy?
There we
What do you
go.
reckon?
Yeah, we'll have a pom-pom masterclass.
Yes, Guy,
Yes.
definitely.
God knows how it's going to go, because I can't imagine how you're going to make pom-poms with a laser, but
Do you want
Another-
to
we'll have a crack
another-
at it.
Yeah, another challenge, Guy. Another challenge. And we had one last question. Oh, actually, I think Mart is here. Why is it important to call out whether something is or isn't a story?
Good question. I would say that it just helps us understand when we see a story put in front of us in organizations, because storytelling in organizations is becoming a bit of a thing now. I think when I first started, it seems a bit woo-woo and weird, whereas now it's actually quite mainstream. But what that means is there's a whole load of people out there who think they're telling stories, but they're not. And the reason that they're not is because it hasn't got that element of emotion, and that's the key. So you can build all the elements of story in, you can have the place, the time, the events, the characters, but if it doesn't actually create emotion in the people who are experiencing this story, it's not a real story. So it's really important to hone our skills in knowing when a story is a story and when it isn't, so that we can kind of identify in our own practice, but also what's going on in organizations. So those examples that I shared from story test. The second one, you might look at it and think, oh, that's a story, but it isn't, because it lacks some of those elements. So we need to recognize it. It's just about building your own practice and your own expertise. I still get it wrong. I go into story test every now and again, and I still get it wrong from time to time.
So those are the questions that went into the chat. I don't know that anyone has any others.
We've got one from
Oh,
Zoe.
Zoe Clark, yeah. So frequency of comms during a change seems to be very difficult to get right. It really does, Zoe. Either it's not frequent enough and people think you're hiding something, or it's too frequent and it's empty with no real info. Very dependent on size, geography of the organization. Do you have any tips for overcoming this?
It's a very good question, Zoe. I think number one, ask people what they want and how often they would like to be communicated with. After you've done a communication, test it with the audience to see, did they get what they needed from it? Do they need more? I think more is probably better than less communications during a change. I think so many programs I've worked on, there's this kind of, well, we're not going to say anything until we have all of the answers, because we don't want to go out there. I can see Debbie laughing. There's, we don't want to tell anyone anything in case they ask us something we don't know. So we're going to not say anything, because that will solve all of those problems. Well, you have to get over that, and you have to just get out there. And it's absolutely okay to say you don't know something, by the way. If you're doing change communications, that's really good. I would encourage it to say, I'm sorry, we don't know that at the moment, or we will tell you this in a few weeks' time, and then do it in a few weeks' time. So I think you have to test it. So there's that reflection piece, but also more rather than less. Keep at it. Different channels as well, because not everyone uses the same channel. So often people get very excited about one particular channel, and then you realize that no one in the organization looks at it. So yeah, multiple channels you have to go for, and just keep repeating yourself.
Tell them again. Yeah.
And you'll still have people saying, well, I don't know anything about this. That will still happen. So, that's fine. That's just change for you.
So Carol and I are absolutely killing ourselves laughing, because we can't think what project you might be speaking about, Susanne.
I mean, I can't imagine, Debbie, and I wouldn't like to say.
Oh.
Hey, Emma has got a question.
Emma has asked one. She has. So Emma is intrigued, Susanne, about using a story at a networking meeting as an intro, because she is off networking tonight. Can you help her?
Yes.
Quick.
So normally when you're at networking, it's kind of like you do a thing. I'm Susanne and I do this, or the other alternative is someone does the in 1982 I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this. So you can literally use the story making template to do it. So you start off with that we've discovered, but almost you do it as once upon a time. So it would be like, this is what I used to do. This is where I came from. And then there was this moment when I changed. I mean, this is really relevant for you, Emma, because you've had a big career change. This is when I changed my practice because of this. And then you do all the because of this, because of this, because of this, because of this. And now I do this. There's an example in the book. I've written my own story in there of how I've got to this point. But it works really well. So you start off with, I'll see if I can find it and I can tell you a bit from it. I can't remember what page it's on.
Typical. I've just taken out all my things.
Yeah, it's in the book somewhere. But use it. So set the scene. Starting off with, once upon a time. So mine tends to start with 25 years ago. I worked in Big Four change consulting, and I got frustrated by X, Y, and Z. Because of that, I decided to do this, this, and this. Because of that, I ended up doing a PhD, and because of that, I ended up writing a book. And now I use this in my work with my clients. That sort of thing.
Page 110.
Yeah.
On it.
Thanks, guys. Yeah,
that brings us to the end of our questions, but I think Emma would like to talk to you, Susanne.
Say a few words, Emma.
I will come on just at that moment as you've done that introduction. I'm just so happy. Just obviously you referenced my career change, but being in change and working with you on change was just one of the best points in my career, sharing ideas, sitting and chatting and talking about what has now obviously become, part of this incredible body of work that you have put out into the world. I will admit I have only read the introduction, but I am literally chomping at the bit. It's going to be a book I read in bed because I just can't wait to get my hands on it properly and really dive into it. Because as I've been listening to what you've been saying, there is so much that I can see that resonates for individual transformational change just as much as organizational. So I'm really looking forward to diving into it for my own work now as well. So yeah, congrats.
Thanks, Emma.
And when's the in real life event going to happen?
Oh, well, you know what? I had a big debate with myself about that, but I realised everyone lives so far away. And if I had it in Birmingham, then Helen wouldn't be able to come because she's in Ireland, and then she'd murder me. So, it's there's people are too far flung, I think.
You'd have to go on Progress, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would. A progress. I like the idea of that, actually. A progress around the
While
United
you're doing it, dive into
and
some of those
Ireland.
bookstores, sneak into a bookshop, find a copy of the book, sign it, put it back on the shelf again.
Yeah, listen, I'm just waiting for an excuse to be invited over, Susanne. So, it wouldn't matter if it was over in the UK. I'd still make it over.
Oh, thank you. Is that to see me or Cookie, though? I want to be clear.
I would like to plead the fifth on that. Yeah, it was to see you, obviously, not Cookie.
One of Cookie's biggest fans. But just to pick up, Emma, on your point about individual transformation. So Samantha and I were having a conversation on LinkedIn today about it. So Sam, you work in that field of individual transformation as well, don't you? And it is so relevant for both elements. You can talk about, organisation change, but actually all of this is relevant to individual change as well.
Do you have any ideas on what's next, Susanne, or is it far too early? Having just put the pen down and talked about how you've needed time in between things, I just do wonder, is there a seed of something that's next or not yet?
There's a few things bubbling around, but I think I just want to have a bit of a rest. It's been quite full on the last few years, and I think I would just quite like to just have a job, just do a job
Normal life.
instead of having like an extra job, which is what it's been for about the last, many years, probably about 15 years. So yeah, I think I'll have a rest for a while. Next thing for me, actually, as Helen's here has reminded me, I'm going to be talking about all this with the Change Management Institute in Ireland in December. So yeah, more of that sort of stuff, I hope, just getting out there and spreading the word. But yeah, I've got a few ideas up my sleeve, but probably not another book, not yet.
Oh, you sound like
not yet.
Yeah, not yet. You sound like
Not
Taylor Swift or Harry Styles when they've done a big concert and it's gone on for years and years, and they say, I just want to relax, and you just imagine them going and booking a huge yacht Is that perhaps something you might do, you, Cookie, Garant and Mia, off on a yacht?
I'm up for the yacht scenario. Yeah, that would be fine.
Yeah.
I think it's funny because I've had this conversation with a few people and I've always gone, I'm not going to do anything. And everyone I know, bar none, have gone, yeah, right, that will last about half an hour. So yeah, I'm sure something will happen. But at the moment, I don't have any ideas in my mind, but I'm sure something will happen eventually.
I think we could just revel and enjoy, this whole thing. Yeah, just it's an amazing achievement. Absolutely amazing. I've already shared it with the whole of cohort 5
I saw
on ILP. I've put it into the
Amazing.
Teams chat with the PDF, so it's already in there.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it. I think, yeah, you're right. I want to just enjoy it. I want to, enjoy it and enjoy talking to people about it and then see what happens. But I've got a few little ideas up my sleeve. I'm quite interested actually in investigating the idea of neurodiversity and change and thinking about neurodiverse workplaces and making change more accessible for people. That's a little thing that's playing in my head at the moment.
Already doing it. Can you work with me?
Oh, yes. Yes, please, Mark.
Amazing.
So
wow.
I just want to say before we finish, big thanks to everyone for coming. I'm going to do a little competition. So somebody who comes along today will get the full pack of merch. So I'm just going to share with you this lovely stuff that Guy's made for me. So there's the Change Stories bookmark.
Love that.
There's a Change
hold
Story.
it up a bit longer. Hold it up a bit longer.
Shopping
It's so
trolley
beautiful.
token.
Sorry, there's the bookmark.
It's gorgeous.
Thing
It
of
is
beauty.
beautiful. You can put that in the window as well.
Change Stories trolley tokens. Everyone's very excited about those.
Yeah.
The Change Stories book stand, which features the cover.
That is beautiful.
And obviously a signed copy of the book. So someone who's here today, I will draw names out of a hat later and somebody will get a prize in the post. So I'll be in touch by email. Thanks, Emma. And I also have a 30% discount code, which I'm going to put in the chat now, so that you can go onto the Practical Inspiration Publishing website and you can get 30% off.
Fantastic.
I'm putting that there now.
Well, Susanne does that. Is there anyone else that would like to say a few words or any other questions for Susanne? Oh, some lovely messages.
Yeah, you've had so many lovely messages in the chat, Susanne.
Thank you. I will have a proper look at those later while we were going.
With your glass of bubbles. That's
I will.
Hi, Ian. Oh, nice to meet you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, lovely. Nicola says, congratulations, Susanne. Ian says, congratulations. There's so many people wishing you congratulations.
Yeah.
And they're so excited because they've got their book. But of course, as Emma said, we haven't managed to read it yet. But listening to you today has given so many people food for thought, like really exciting to go away and think about how they can make change happen in their lives and in their organizations in a much more positive way as you've aimed to do. So, Samantha's already started it. She's already
started.
I'm just waving at my niece. My niece is here, Catherine.
Hi. You're a very clever auntie.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, Susanne, you've got so many cheerleaders. It's not just me and Rebecca, everyone. You should this is just such an accomplishment. You should be so proud of yourself. And you could see everyone can't wait to get stuck in. So we just wait for those Amazon reviews to come flooding now. Not just all the cheerleaders, but all the people that just, see it on the bestseller list and think that looks really interesting. Let's give that a go. So yeah, well done, my friend. Well done.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming. It's been so much fun this afternoon. And thank you, Rebecca and Kate, for hosting. It's been amazing. I've so enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to a glass of champagne this evening. Yeah, I think we're probably ready to wrap up. But if people want to stay on and chat, I'm very happy to stay on and chat. yeah, it'd be nice to have a bit more time to say hello to people if people are able to hang around. But thank you all so much for coming. It's been really fun.
Thank you, everybody. Been lovely to see you all. I'm going to put myself on mute now so I can hand over to you all. And anyone who wants to say hi to Susanne can do so. But lovely to meet you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Susanne. I'm actually going to jump off and go and do something, but we should catch up anyway.
Oh, I know. I'll let you know next time I'm coming down south.
Yeah. Or I'll send you an invite. I'll have a look at your diary and
yeah, thanks, Debbie. That would be great.
See you later.
And Carol, I'll see you at Christmas. Christmas drinks are in the diary already.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Carol. Carol's also come out of retirement to come along today, so thank you.
Yeah, I'll be using this in my new world of schools now.
Oh, wow. Yes. Well, yes, definitely.
Get them young. That's it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Carol.
I'm laughing because I started off a very normal colour and now the evening has taken hold and now I've gone completely blue because it's absolutely pitch black in Dublin here. So yeah.
I've got a lot of lighting around me at the moment. I've got 2 lighting rigs here and here, one behind me. So yeah, this is my my podcasting setup for
professional, not
like
me. Know. Not like me. I'm like, please don't see me. I am actually a blue person.
It was about 20 quid on Amazon, so it's not
That was brilliant fun. I'm sorry I had to dip in and out a bit because of